Look, I do think it's true that Boris Johnson has faced more than his fair share of scandals. And in most cases, a lot of them do seem to have bounced off him. I'm still not convinced that this is going to be one of those things that does cut through. However, there's lots of reasons to think that this one might actually be something that makes a difference, even if previous scandals haven't. One of the reasons for that is a lot of the scandals that previously took place were happening right in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic or the vaccine rollout. And at those times, the public were telling us that they were willing to give the government the benefit of the doubt. They appreciated the difficult situation they were in. Now we started to move to a different stage of the pandemic. I don't think that benefit of the doubt is quite there as much. And therefore, they might find things a bit more difficult and things might start to cut through a little bit more. We've also run a snap poll today, and I think it's fair to say that trust in the government is not particularly there from voters. There are fewer members of the public that believe what Boris Johnson is saying about this story. More people think that the moon landings were faked than think the Prime Minister is telling the truth about this story. So I think that basically indicates that as we've seen contradictory lines and going backwards and forwards on this story, the public are out of patience when it comes to what Boris Johnson's saying here.
Yeah, Boris Johnson seems to preside over quite an interesting dichotomy, which is that I think most of the general public don't really take his word as truth. And yet a lot of people are still rather enamoured with him. It seems to me that any sort of protest against the Prime Minister is most likely to come from within the party itself. And yet I fear that there's probably going to be further revelations about other parties that have taken place, the other side of the Commons perhaps. Do you think that you're expecting to see polling shift significantly this Christmas, or has Boris essentially established a pattern now where he somehow survives this stuff?
Well, look, I don't think we should see Boris Johnson as magic or mythical. Things do still have an impact on him. I think basically what we've seen in his premiership is the first few months he was dealing with Brexit. The following year after he won that election in 2019, he was dealing with a pandemic. He hasn't yet faced politics as normal, so to speak, where these kind of scandals are more likely to have an impact. So if we are going into a period where politics is behaving more normally without these big dramatic events like Brexit or coronavirus, potentially these things will have a bit more of an impact. And it is also worth knowing that he isn't incredibly popular. Far more people disapprove of the job he's doing than approve. Our opinion poll out today showed that the majority of the country, for the first time, a majority think that he should resign from the job that he's doing. The vast majority don't trust and believe that what he says. So he isn't a particularly popular politician. And these things are still having an impact.
But is he rather saved somewhat by the fact that despite what goes on at government level, despite issues with Matt Hancock, Dominic Cummings, this Christmas party, and more issues that are bound to come in the wake of this, that the Labour Party just don't seem to be able to land a blow? They're reactive. They jump on issues every time issues pop up and say, well, we would have done better. But it seems to me that the general public aren't buying that line either.
I think that's true. I think there's a sort of expectations game going on here. What we've seen consistently in polling and focus groups that we've run on a lot of these scandals is lots of people will reply to us saying, well, they're all as bad as each other, and they'll tell us that actually they wouldn't expect Labour to do any better job were they in government. Labour's still not done a particularly good job at convincing voters that they would be any better and that they would be better behaved, for example. And I think Labour also has two particular issues that they still need to overcome, despite all this stuff. Firstly, people do view Keir Starmer as competent, but they also view him as not necessarily a strong enough person for the top job. And secondly, people don't trust Labour to run the economy, despite the fact that we're over nearly 15 years from the financial crash. So they're the two big problems Labour need to overcome. Now, those arguments will be easier when the Conservative is mired in scandal like this, but the Labour Party's still got a lot of work to do to make those arguments if they want to stand a chance at winning the next election.